But, you know, I was thinking about that Beatles song, you know, when I'm 64, will you still want me and need me? Good. I guess so, yeah. You know, it's a big deal getting 80, you know? Shoot, I made it, you know? And you know, I should have died many times years ago in the Himalayas. And here I am. I'm still kicking, you know? I think back of some of the stupid things I did. From caves to stupid bus rides to the middle of nowhere, you know. But I made it. And so have you. And I want to, you know, well, I just want to say I love you, you know. I care. And it has been my sole purpose, I think, in life, you know, is to care. And with that caring has come a lot of acknowledgement, and I accept it. I understand. You know, the Dharma is so vast and so wide and goes so deep.
Doug, are you coming where we're in?
Nancy, great, you know. She actually got me teaching. You know, I was chicken. I didn't like getting up in front of people. You know, that was just not my thing. But Nancy, she talked me into it. And I said, oh, okay. And I'm so grateful because I had to learn how to not be so self-conscious, which is what it was. It was just self-conscious. And I just had to turn it into conscious. But I didn't know how to do that. But it took you all for me to learn to do that, you know. And then it was no longer about me. It was just about how this happens.
John, it was Joseph Goldstein.
Joseph, yes, it's true.
Told
We
me,
have to acknowledge
he
Joseph,
said you
yes.
have to go back home and tell John he's got to start teaching now.
He did.
Yeah,
He said it's my time, you know.
yeah, he did.
Yeah, it's great.
Happy birthday
Okay, happy birthday. To who?
to you, my
Buddha.
dear.
Yes, of course. I know that. But what I'd like to do is I'm going to do a bell meditation, which some of you may know, or many of you may know, and we'll see where we go from there. You know, I'm just touched that you showed up for this little sliver of time, and you know, in a way, it just says, you know, I've cared a lot for all of you over the years. You know that, and so here we are now. You know, I'm thinking it's been a road and a long road, and you know, my first 20 years were so much of the time was just probably in Asia. I was just a bum, you know. I was never wanted to be a teacher. So this evolved, and thanks. I will say, Nancy said, Joseph Goldstein said, "You got to teach." And I went, "No, I don't think so," you know. And here I am, thanks to Joseph, many people's encouragement. So I'm going to do a. We're going to see how this works. So I would like to start with a reading. This is from the Book of the Great Liberation by Padmasambhava. And it simply goes like this. There being really no duality, all separation is untrue. Enlightenment, the whole of samsara and nirvana, are the inseparable unity, are one's own mind. Although the one mind is, it has no separate existence. When one seeks one's mind in its true, naked, immaculate state, not made of anything, being of the voidness, clear, timeless, without duality, transparent, colorless, not realizable as separate things, but as the unity of all things, yet not composed or limited by, of one taste. One's mind is like a great empty sky, being of the voidness. All things arise naturally. The clouds pass away. Looking into one's own mind is the way to understand one's true nature. So you can just kind of close your eyes and allow yourself just to leave your ears as they are, and they will take in whatever appears, but it also disappears. Nothing stays. So it is this wonderful thing with the bells, that they arise and they pass away, just like each of you will have arisen and you will pass away. That's just nature. And we are of this natural state. Just listening to the subtle play of the sounds, arising and passing away. Being aware of the sounds without giving them names. Things arise from nowhere and they pass back into nowhere. So it is with the breath, the body. All thoughts arise and pass in this marvelous empty sky of mind. Just listening as the subtle play of sounds arise and pass. No inside, no outside. Just this vast, empty sky that holds all things. As you listen, try to imagine or sense that your mind is not limited to your head. There are no boundaries to the mind. That your mind, awareness, is like a great, vast space, as big as this whole room, and bigger yet. Open and clear, like an empty sky. sounds arise, thoughts arise, sensations arise, but they all pass in this wonderful empty sky of mind. To see if this is so, look within your own mind. No boundaries, no inside, no outside. One simply recognizes that things arise and pass, as you will arise and pass. There is no stopping. There is simply awareness that follows the sound, the pulsation of the blood and the breath and the trees and this wonderful place that we inhabit or live. If you look carefully, there is no physical body. Sounds arise in this empty space of mind. No inside, no outside. There is no head, no arms, no legs. Just certain sensations. There is coolness, warmth, hardness, softness, vibration, all passing in this great, vast, empty sky. To see if this is so, look within your own mind. If you notice carefully, there is no body. There is simply space. Sounds arise, pass. Sensations, known as sometimes warmth, sometimes coolness, sometimes it is just the feeling of knowing everything is coming and everything is going. You are more than your thoughts. You are this vast, open, empty space that holds all things without defining them, without being something that has to be named or held, but simply in this great awareness of being. No inside, no outside. The mind in its natural state is perfectly at rest. To see if this is so, look within your own mind. The breath moves like a breeze. sensations float and change in this same open, transparent space. Yet the mind in its natural state is undisturbed. Like the sky is unmoved by the clouds that arise, so no inside, no outside, no boundaries or limits. Just as the sounds arise and pass, just as the breath appears and disappears, so it is. As you notice the breath arise and pass, also thoughts arise and pass. Images, feelings arise for a moment in the same space of mind. No inside, no outside. Just this open space. Words and feelings come and go. They only exist for a time. Into this clear, open, colorless, transparent space of mind. To see if this is so, look within your own mind. When the mind is no longer seeking, and one allows the pulsations and the senses, the sound to come and go, one notices that there is also a deeper feeling. There is no separateness. The separateness was the delusion, was the illusion. And what is true is that there is just this. Just this. This is it. You finally come to a place where there is just this. No outside, no inside, no over there, no over here, not in here or out here. One begins to recognize that there is a wholeness, something that holds all things, but is not made of any single thing. The mind, which is a colorless, tasteless, odorless experience of being. And that being is enough. No more looking for somewhere far away, but someplace close, right here, as the breath breathes you. And the mind allows images and sounds and thoughts and feelings to come and pass. Ultimately, there is no knowing here. There is just being. It has no roots, no home. To know if this is so, listen carefully. What it is that arises and passes. So the mind is just this vast empty sky holding everything but not attached to any of it. Just allowing it to arise and be known and pass. So yes, thoughts, feelings, impatience, happiness, peacefulness, interest, sadness arise and pass in this clear, boundaryless sky. No inside, no outside. Sensations float and change. There is no inside. There is no outside. Actually, no beginning and no end. It's also true when the emptiness is predominant and allowing everything to come and go. Then the heart begins to be noticed. Not separate from the space itself, but the knowing that the space itself is the heart knowing itself. So no one is separate. Nothing is separate. They all arise in the same empty phenomena that has come as a gift to you. This thing called life. May your happiness prevail. So thank you for letting me indulge in this that holds all things, empty of anything else.
We're doing a set change.
Oh, a set change. Oh, yes. Okay.
Hey,
Yeah.
Kat, we're gonna walk,
You walk that over
we're gonna
there.
go right by you.
Okay. Here you go. Just don't drop it. The last bells I used there, I realized that was in the late 60s. I found those in Kathmandu. And they're actually, the tingshaws, they're called tingshaws in Tibetan. And those particular ones have 5 different stones that are, when they make the tingshaw itself, they grind up turquoise and there's a little bit of gold, a little bit of silver, a little bit of coral. So there are the elements that are actually ground into a powder and put in the metal of the tingshaws. So it's quite phenomena, you know. And I get to see who you are out there. Oh my goodness, there's Patricia, there's Alex. Oh my. Oh, you're even on there. I'm on there too. Oh, who's that? Oh, geez almighty. I don't think I need him there.
Yeah, you do, because we have a surprise.
Oh, okay.
So,
Well, I like surprises. Please. We're at that time, aren't we?
Yeah, so we have some special guests. So I'd like to invite our first special guest, and he will show up on the screen any moment now.
Hey, Gil.
Is he spotlit?
Hey, John. John, let's
Just
see.
one moment, it'll happen.
It will happen.
Yes.
You dropped way down here.
This is an order of enlightenment here.
Well, then it's very important that I'm after John.
Well, we've been together for a long time.
Yeah, boy.
Whoa,
Let's see.
it's been quite a journey, you know. And I'm so grateful for your friendship all these years, you know.
Yes.
We've taught a lot of people, you know. And I'm getting to be an old, I was going to say an old fart, but I really, I guess that's improper language.
Well, John, let's call it for today. Let's call you an old sage.
I like that. I'll work on that. So it's great.
It was very special to show up on the Zoom at the end of your. Let's see. I'm hearing myself. Let's see. Maybe that way. So it was very special to show up and hear the last bells that you rang. And I thought, wow, this is so wonderful to you ringing these bells. And then you spoke this beautiful teaching. I felt, wow, this is the culmination of 60 years of practice, that teaching. And then you just outdid yourself. And went on and talked about the heart and how the heart is connected to the space. And then you went on and you talked about the minerals and the tingshaws in this precise kind of way. I mean, what do you're not going to leave anything out of your Dharma.
No. It is complete. But I'm not complete. I'm still here. You know. And someday that won't be true. I'm aware of that. It was great being at Spirit Rock. You weren't there for this last, but opening up the stupa and having, you know, Robert Hall and just the ashes of Robert Hall and Wes Nisker, such my old friends, and there's some of the ashes of Ajahn Chah and a statue from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and someday I'm going to be put in there, and someday you'll be put in there.
So we're going to be together for eternity.
For eternity, that's it. You don't get out of this one.
Well, I don't mind that at all.
Oh. It's great.
So the yeah, it was so wonderful to meet you, John. We met in that teacher training. Though we met the first time.
Oh.
You usually are someone who, I think of you as someone who says yes a lot. And the first thing you told me was no.
That's true.
You remember that story?
Yes, I do. You asked to stay at my house, and I had, who was it? Joseph Goldstein in Kathmandu. And there was Joseph Goldstein there. There was Spirit Weiss. There was
Probably Sharon.
Sharon Salzberg. We had a pretty full house. You know, we weren't that.
But you'd never met me before. We just met in a little alley someplace.
That's right.
I kind of somehow, maybe I was looking for your house. And so
You were.
you know me. But the first thing I did was ask if I could stay with you. And so
I said no.
but you've been
You know, I've been practicing this saying no. So that was one of my first experiences of having to do that.
I'm glad I could be of service.
Well, you were. It's a it's a great gift to be able to say yes, but also to say no when it's appropriate.
Well,
And
the rest of your life since then, you've been saying yes to me.
absolutely, and yeah, and my heart stays open, and that's really what it's to me is what this is all about. Because God, crazy world we live in, and suffering is so. Like there's a thin veil between suffering and awareness. And if we can just recognize that awareness is the door, not to the suffering, but to the actual awakening, then we're going to do good, and you will do good. And I am so grateful. I'm grateful to you, Gil. You have been such a good friend of mine for. That was, boy, when was that? That was before I started teaching, so that was a long time ago.
40 years ago.
40 years, ooh, geez. Shh, shh, shh. Don't say it too loud. But I'm still here.
I think the memory I have that really time when I think our friendship solidified was you came and picked me up at Davis in your pickup truck. And you drove me all the way down to Yucca Valley for the retreat with Jack and Stan Groff.
Right.
We talked the whole way down, and we probably should have been arrested for driving under the influence of the Dharma.
That's true, yes.
Because we just talked about our experiences, our time with Buddhism, and it was, we both got so high.
We did. And we stayed on the road. It's great. Yeah, that was a good introduction.
Yeah.
And
you've told so many stories of your life over the years, and many people here probably have heard a lot of them, but it's quite special for me coming here today and hearing your teachings earlier to remember your stories of when you got started in the Dharma. You were different then.
Yeah, they were.
And the way you described it, you were kind of disembodied, disconnected. The Tibetan teacher had to tell you to walk and stomp.
Yep.
To feel the ground.
Stay in my body. What body? Yeah.
And here you are.
Here I am. I'm still here. And I am so happy to know you. And thank you for coming on this experience here, because I know you are deeply loved as a Dharma teacher,
Well, you're deeply loved by me. You're my brother, my really good friend, and
it's true.
And
yes.
I'm such a better person because I've known you.
Oh,
It's been really good influence on my life, and being able to do these wonderful things we've done together over the years. All the teachings we've done, conversations we had in that teepee, and it's been a really wonderful trip with you, John. And
it's great. Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate you taking the time to check in with this collective, this community that's, we are all Dharma lovers, And being Dharma lovers, we also then, I think it's that thing of emptiness and fullness. And yes, you have to have the emptiness, but then there's also fullness. And that's what we're talking about right now, is fullness. Yeah, wonderful.
And then also what I've seen over the years that's relevant for today is this is not just a celebration of you, but it's also a celebration of Mountain Stream. And
Yes.
that Mountain Stream grow from almost nothing. And we've met and talked about it, and I've heard the stories of you being the circuit preacher, driving all over and supporting so many people, and the adventures you had with buying property and selling it, and and investing Dharma money and making money and on it. And I mean, you really put your heart, effort, and sincerity into building this community. And you've done a phenomenal job with the help of many, many people I know.
Yes.
But you to stick it, you stuck to it. You consistent. You were steady, and for you to kind of come now to 80 when you're not teaching so much, and to be sitting in this place with those tankas and Buddhas all around you. I mean, you must have been reborn in heaven already.
Why not? Yeah, all the years I collected all this art, and now I get to come here and visit it, and that's so, and you've visited it, so heartful for me, because it really honors a lot of the artists that, their practice and precision was so phenomenal,
Yeah.
It's great.
Great. So, John, thank you very much for being my friend, and let's continue traveling together. And I'll be up in mountains. I'm up in Nevada City in the beginning of August or in August. So hopefully
Great.
you're
I'll be around,
great, John.
or, yeah,
I love you, John.
I love you so much, We've had a phenomenal trip, you know. And we've affected so many people. I mean, it was great being at Spirit Rock last week, yeah, when they opened the stupa up, and I went, wow, we've come a long way. Do you remember when we wanted to get a stupa built?
Yes, we raised some money for
And
them.
we raised money for it. And that was how long ago? This thing just got finished. So that was
35 years ago.
35 years ago.
I
We
think,
wanted a stupa, and we raised money for it.
yeah, but I think that money got absorbed
It,
into,
it got sucked up. You know, that's the thing about money. It's pretty, it has this tendency of coming and going. So
well, thank you, John. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
I do too, we're still here. And I'm sure the community here is very grateful to you for your teaching and for my persistence. That's really what it's been. But then being here with all these people, I'm like, I know so many of you for so long. It's like, oh my God, it just warms my heart, And you have always been a piece of my heart, Gil. You know that, And
Thank you, John. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And
Thank
Gil,
you.
this is Adam. Thank you so much for showing up. You can't see me, but thank you. And I just want to let everybody know that Gil's in the middle of teaching a retreat right now, and he has a Dharma talk soon. So
we got a little of the Dharma talk.
so hopefully it's inspired you for your Dharma talk, actually.
Yeah, I'll channel you. I'll channel you, John.
Thank you, Gil.
Thank you.
Savadika.
So before our next mystery guest, I wanted to read a message. Sharon Salzberg sent me a message this morning for John.
That's sweet.
And it says, Dear John, it's quite incredible that we met more than 50 years ago. That so highlights for me what the Buddha said about the dreamlike nature of this world. Life is like an echo, like a rainbow, like a flash of lightning in a summer sky, like a dream. I have such strong memories of those early courses in Bodh Gaya, meeting you and the Dharma at the same time, your vast spirit and boundless heart. I know those attributes have only increased and not diminished as we've gotten older in this dreamlike world. Happy birthday. Love, Sharon.
Oh, sure. Well, I remember traveling with her, boy, so many different places, times, all for the Dharma. We didn't know anything else.
All right, so we'll bring up our next mystery guest and have a little more conversation. Thank you for coming, Joseph.
Yeah, it's a great honor. Hey, John, happy birthday.
Oh, Joseph, thank you. I love
Happy
you.
80. It's about time you got here.
I'm trying to catch up, but I don't think I'll make it. Hey, I love you. I miss you sometimes.
Yeah.
You are such, starting off on Bodh Gaya,
Yeah.
so many moons ago,
Almost 60 years.
almost 60 years.
It's kind of unbelievable.
I know it is, isn't it, Joseph?
Well, I have a plan, John, for this little time together.
Yes.
Instead of singing your praises, which would be very easy to do, since everyone knows what a spectacular being you are, I thought I would interview you about your life, your practice, your teaching, and be a chance to kind of share, just different parts of yourselves and your life that I may not know and other people may not know. So if you're up for that.
I'm up for it.
Great.
I'm here.
So first, I'm just wondering if you remember when we first met. I know it was in Bodh Gaya, but was it before the Goenka retreats or after?
It was before, and I remember very clearly, and I was I think I was in Hindu robes then, a shaved head, and I was staying at what was that, the guest house in Bodh Gaya.
Yeah.
And I met you and I went, wow. And we talked we went to the tea shop and we talked and talked. It was like I had found my brother.
Yeah.
And I had,
Well, that's what was so amazing, because even from the first meeting, I think we both felt this amazing heart connection.
Yes, we did.
And it's lasted all these years. And what's amazing about it, to me, is that even when we don't see one another that often, that connection is still there. It's immediate.
It's still there.
Yeah. So the first question I want to ask you,
yes,
what first motivated you to go to India?
Oh, okay. This is quite. I think I took some LSD.
Well, you weren't alone.
and before you did, and I went, this is not enough. I want something. I know it's so much bigger world, and that's when I went, oh, India, and it was kind of a mystery in some ways, and going overland was, oh my God, I'm lucky I lived through it. Getting sick in Kabul and all those things, But, I really trusted that there was some deep Dharma that I needed to connect to, but I didn't know exactly how to do that. So India was just, okay, that's the big map. And somewhere in that, and of course, I spent, about a year and a half in Kathmandu before I came. I think I came down to Bodh Gaya before that. But then I came down and I met you. And I went, oh, the West is going to be fine. I don't have to spend the rest of my life here with dysentery and all the different things that sort of came with that territory at that time,
Yeah.
It was pretty funky.
It was so amazing to me because in those first years, our relationship developed, over time. But in those first years, in a way, our paths were quite different in India because I was kind of this guy, landed in Bodh Gaya. That's where I stayed until the hot season, and then would go up to the mountains. And you were kind of this like wild sadhu kind of
I
guy.
was sadhu.
Hindu robes, Tibetan robes, Nepali robes. And it was always amazing to me just to hear your stories, of traveling around in the way you did and meeting all these great masters,
Great teachers,
and
yes.
gurus. So one of the things I wanted to ask you was, in all of this crazy wisdom journey of yours, which of the teachers outside of the Vipassana tradition really were most important to you?
Well, I can say, when I think about it, I think Neem Karoli Baba was a phenomenal creature, but he was a creature. He was not it was not like a human being, And I just remember, he laid into Ram Dass a couple times. He was fierce, and I feel so privileged because I got to be in the room with Neem Karoli when Ram Dass came and gave the book, the Be Here Now, and Neem Karoli threw it across the room. He threw it across the room. He said, "Oh yeah." And
I've been here now forever.
that's right. Anyway, that was pretty astounding to me. But Joseph, I was just a sadhu, a gypsy, just a seeker,
Yeah.
and the quintessential seeker.
Well, it was pretty inspiring to me, and since it was so unlike me, I really just reveled in everything you were doing. So I'm curious whether Neem Karoli Baba had any words for you.
Oh, I'm sure he did, but they weren't necessarily nice words. But that's okay. But he saw me, and I saw him, and he was just a character. It was like out of a movie script or something.
Yeah.
And at the same time, he always talked about love, but boy, I didn't see too much. He was fierce,
Yeah.
but I needed that fierceness, and I believed in it. And, I hung out with Rajneesh and Swami Muktananda, and gosh, it was just a long array of gypsy travels, You were kind of steady. You stayed. Yes. And I have to say, Joseph, when I met you, you were like, hey, this is a rock, And you have proven that over and over again, Yeah. You didn't need to do what I did. I just, I was the restless,
Right.
dyslexic, I don't know. I was kind of hopeless, I think.
Well, no, I think it's just if I'm not mistaken, you're an Aries, and
Yes.
I'm a Taurus. And
There you go. There we
That's
go.
the difference.
That's the
I could go
the ground
walking the
and
same path again and again and again.
flitty fire off to chase the wonders of this life.
Yeah. So who was your first Vipassana teacher?
Actually, Munindraji was.
Uh-huh.
And if I remember right, you took me to Munindra. When he was at the
The Gandhi ashram?
At the ashram, yeah.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, this is steady.
Yeah. So did you actually practice with him for a while, or just you met him and inspired?
Well, I actually practiced,
Uh-huh.
but not. I was such a flitty guy, it's like, oh, okay, well, you know, I'll try this and I'll try that and we'll
Yeah,
see
you weren't
where it
into
all lands.
lifting, moving, placing.
That's right. And then it was like, oh man, this is boring. Who would want to do this, And of course I'd come out of, a year and a half or something with the Tibetans and all the, fireworks and colors and all that, And here was something steady and simple.
Yeah.
And I'm
yeah.
so grateful to have
Yeah.
kind of been able to recognize the value of that.
Yeah, yeah. When I first met Muninjidi, I had come also looking for a teacher, ended up in Bulgaria. Somebody introduced me to him, and he said something similar to what you're saying. He said something that was so simple, it totally hooked me. He said, if you want to understand your mind, sit down and observe it. That was it. There was
That was it. That's
no
the whole instruction.
ceremony, nothing to join. And I love that. So I sat down and spent some years watching this crazy.
Well, we're still watching, aren't we?
Yeah. So when you look back to those early years, of your practice, and then with Goenkaji, what would you say were your greatest hindrances? And did you ever have any doubt about that once you started practicing?
Right. But being an Aries, therefore, I was impetuously restless. And so, there's got to be a little more, and a little more, until I burned out. And then I went, oh, let's stay with the simplest thing. And I finally woke up to that. But I had spent, a year and a half with the Tibetans. I'd taken vows and all sorts of stuff, and then Hindu robes. Oh my God!
Who ordained you in the Hindu tradition?
Satyananda Saraswati. He part of Shivananda's legacy, and he was okay, And I remember I was living in Kathmandu. And who was it? David McCorkle. Oh, he said, "Oh, I know a teacher in India who promises enlightenment in 7 days."
Oh, what's his address?
Oh yeah,
I'll
try that. Oh well, I'm still here.
So, was there ever a time as you went through, met all of these great beings and different teachers and lineages? Was there ever a time when a teacher said something to you that you really felt at odds with? And either
Probably most of it. No,
corrected, what?
most of it. I mean, it had to be profound, flashy, and recognizable. And a lot of times it was very subtle. And, it's sort of like, well, Manindra, he would say things that were profound, but they would go right out they go right through and out the other door, And it took me a long time to wake up to, ooh, you know what? This practice is actually very direct and simple.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's all I care about. But it took a little bit of messing around for a few years there of different people, different teachers that would entrance me for a little while. And then I go, yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
More fluff.
Right. Well, it is interesting. You probably have felt this too, but when I look back on my own trajectory,
Yeah.
there's such a strong sense of just being guided to where we,
Yes.
guided to Bodhgaya practiced of Vipassana through a lot of twists and turns.
Yes.
Yeah, which is, it's really beautiful to be this age and to look back on a whole lifetime of feeling
Yes.
that sense of, yeah, being guided in a certain direction.
It does.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah.
And for sure I was directed because I didn't know anything. I still don't know anything, but there was definitely direction there, you know.
Yeah.
And it wasn't my doing, you know.
Well,
It
keep
was-
in mind, John, that not knowing anything fits in very well with Sansanin, the Korean Zen master's teaching, don't know mind.
no
So,
mind is where it's at.
You had it from the beginning.
From right the beginning, I was.
So another question that came to mind was, you know, like everybody, there are a lot of ups and downs in practice, you know. So I'm curious, like when you were in the down phase, you know, what did you find most helpful?
You know, a simple word called surrender. I had to surrender to the simple. And what I thought I was looking for was much more complex.
Yeah,
And I think you know exactly what I'm saying.
yeah, yeah.
You know, and I had to get comfortable with the simple, you know, and I am now totally comfortable with that.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, it is
Yeah.
such a privilege, you know.
It reminds me of a teaching I read from Maharshi, where he said, try to be less, not more. Yes, I think we're all in the process of becoming less,
I know, and
which is a big relief.
it's thank goodness, yes, because you know, the Western mind that keeps manufacturing, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
just keeps manufacturing,
yeah.
endless manufacture, and we're here.
Yeah.
You know, I am so grateful. I am so grateful to you. You know that. you know.
Yes. Well, it's mutual, you know.
I know, but I have to say it. You know,
Yeah.
I'm catching up. You know.
Yeah.
You're
Well,
what are you? 82 or 83 now?
yeah. 82 next month.
82 next month. Okay, so
Taurus.
we're close.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, but you still are my elder, sir.
Yes. Remember that. So I want to move from India now.
Okay.
So came back from India, and I seem to recall that for some time after coming back from India, that you made your living, your livelihood as a carpenter. And I'm wondering, first, is that true? And second, is that a skill you had or you had to learn?
Wait, I didn't understand that.
That you,
Carpenter. Oh, yeah, no. You know, it was all about grounding me. And I am so grateful for having worked those years. You know, walking around on roofs was not the greatest thing. But all the others, you know, I learned so much about the physical world, which I really didn't know much about, you know.
so did you have those skills beforehand, or did you just have
No.
to learn it from scratch?
No, I did not. You know, I want to thank Monty Edelstein, who was my
Yeah, yeah.
great friend. He still is my great friend, and he was my mentor in carpentry. You know, and he worked for what was it? My brain. Anyway, in La Honda there, I forget, a great singer, Neil Young. Neil Young, yeah, he worked for Neil Young. And then I came along afterwards and worked with him, so, you know.
Well, I was impressed that you learned that skill because I practically flunked 8th grade shop.
I understand.
So the fact that you became a reasonably skilled carpenter to me is one of your great accomplishments.
Well,
You must have been pretty mindful. See, that probably
well, I
sort
didn't
of,
cut off my fingers, so that's that's true. And it taught me a lot about mindfulness.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
who was it? I remember he was a friend of yours in the East Coast, and God, I can't remember his name now, but he became a cabinet maker, and
Yeah, Richard Barsky.
that's it. Yeah,
Yeah,
and you know, I thought, oh, if I could get that good, it would be great. But
yeah, yeah.
you know, I had to move on,
Uh-huh.
and you know, Joseph, it was so hard to. There was a part of me that was really shy, and it was, you know, couldn't believe that now. But then you know, I didn't like getting up in front of people. I thought, oh, never. I actually said, I'll never teach, you know, because it was just too raw, you know. And all it was, you know, there was a tremendous amount of self-doubt there that I've had to overcome, you know.
Uh-huh. Well, that was going to be my next question. What were your biggest challenges when you first started teaching?
Ooh, you know, I was always afraid I'd get up in front and I would freeze
Uh-huh.
and nothing would come out, you know, which actually I don't think ever happened. You know, I would rattle away at things,
Uh-huh.
and I was pretty good at it, you know, or got better at it, you know.
Yes.
And it's been, but it was at the beginning. I was so afraid of, you know, it was like my heart was really sensitive, and I thought, oh, I can never expose all of this. This will be just a disaster. And yet, I had to, because that's the Dharma. You know, you have to expose, and whatever you're hiding is, you know, not much.
Yeah. So now, yeah, I mean, you've been teaching now for many, many years.
Many years.
So do you have, if you would be thinking about what key advice you give over and over again to, you know, your students, is there any kind of particular thing?
Keep it simple.
Uh-huh.
That's really important. And keep your heart open, no matter how much fear or contraction is there. That's really the
Yeah.
crux of it all, you know. And the practice is simple. Staying open isn't, you know.
Yes.
We know that.
Yes. As all the goblins start to come out of the caves.
When it eat you.
So, just in your many years of teaching, what would you say you enjoy most about teaching?
You know, it reminds me to keep my heart open. You know, because the Dharma is no past, no future, just this. And it keeps my heart open. And therefore, I will probably keep teaching until I can't. You know, and I know you will too, because
Yeah.
it's the same story.
Yeah.
We're in the same story,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I love you, Joseph.
Yeah. I feel the same thing. I mean, in teaching, it's just such a meta field,
Yes,
you know, and to be living in that is just great.
it is
Yeah.
great. Yes. You know.
Okay, so I just have two more questions.
Oh, okay.
Can you bear it?
Yes, I can bear it.
So I know kind of over the years you've had a few different health crises.
Yes, I have.
So I'm wondering, if and how your practice really helped you during those times, because a lot of people, it's a common situation as in life and as we get older.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering kind of what you learned or what you applied, in those times.
Well, thank God for the practice because if it wasn't for the practice, I probably would have gone a little berserk.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say, I have been also, friendship has held me so well, which I am so grateful for those that have helped me when my body was not so good.
Mm-hmm.
But because I have good Dharma friends, I have been held and fed and, you know, and so to me, friends
Mm-hmm.
and the practice of non-reactivity. So, one of the things was I remember I was in the hospital for 5 days where pain never stopped, you know, and this is after I had had some of my, I don't know, bunch of stuff removed. And Joseph, I was in pain the whole time, and yet there was a part of me that was not attached to that. It was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that's just pain. And where did I learn that? On the cushion,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And otherwise, I don't know what would have happened.
Yeah. Well, that's really a testament to your practice and a reminder that when we work with when we're sitting is good practice.
It's great practice. And I don't wish
Right.
anything that happened to me to anyone, period. But if it wasn't for the practice, I think in some sense I would have been, this is a terrible thing because I'm not, but it feels like I would have been mean or something. It's like
Mm-hmm.
instead of, and we know that, people that have
Mm-hmm.
physical problems and then they get nasty, like unhappy and I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
It just softened me a little more,
Mm-hmm.
and so I hate to say this, but I'm actually quite grateful for that pain that had to transform some of the last vestiges of grasping. And I'm not there yet, I know, but I've learned a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the pain is a great teacher, if used properly.
Yeah.
It can also turn to its opposite. But I think for me, it just made me more tolerant and more happy to be alive, and more, I'm more heartfelt than I've ever been.
Yeah. That's
But
beautiful.
yeah.
Okay, one last question, and I'll stop
Yes.
badgering you. I'll stop badgering you.
Okay.
But it's great to hear,
I
just like
know.
it's like a 15-minute survey of John Travis's life. I love it. So it wasn't until we taught together in Jackson Hole,
Yeah.
and it goes back quite a few years, that I found out that in addition to being a Dharma teacher, you were also a poet, because you would read your poetry in your Dharma
Yes,
talks.
I did. Yes.
And that was really beautiful for me.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering when you first started writing poetry and how it intersects with your Dharma practice.
It's huge, because to me, I'm not a very complicated mental gymnast, but what I am is that I could, take things and kind of put them together in a poetic fashion that came from, I started, boy, what was that year? That was a long time ago. And when I first started writing, and I kept it very secret for a long, long time, because people like Gary Snyder and stuff like that, and went, oh my God, here's little John doing his taking pieces of language and refining them so that they exemplified what I was trying to say. And that's really what poetry is,
Yeah.
And you're a great poet now.
Yeah, great, really great.
Yeah, it's okay. I know you. And we, but you also had a piece of that,
Yeah,
and I had a piece of it, and I just didn't know it until I tried it. Went, oh, you know what? This satisfies some part of me.
Yeah. So when did you first start? Before your Dharma practice, or?
Well, no, not before my Dharma practice. I may have, going back to boarding school or something, but it wasn't concretized or actually made into something until I was with Trungpa Rinpoche, and somehow he inspired me to start, and I think I don't know if I was in Boulder or I was on my way to Boulder, one of those trips.
Well, I want to share one image of you which is imprinted in my mind, which in some way it captures who you are. And this is one time when I was out on a ski trip, out west, in Tahoe, and you came up, and of course you're an expert skier, and I'm kind of an intermediate skier. And so we were going down, and then at a certain point on the mountain, you started skiing down the mountain backwards. And then you were saying, oh yeah, why don't you try that? Which is the last thing in the world I would ever do. But it was so much fun. It was like totally out of the box skiing. And so you're kind of out of the box kind of guy.
I am.
Yeah, and it has been totally great knowing you. The heart connection is so deep.
It's so deep.
Yeah.
Nothing we can ever do.
Yeah.
It's
Great. So
I love you dearly. You know that.
Likewise. Yeah.
Likewise. Yeah. It's great.
So happy birthday.
Thank you, Joseph.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Joseph. Really appreciate you coming. Yeah, this is Adam, by the way. We've been emailing. Yeah, thank you all. All right. So the next special guest is all of you. So we're going to have a little open mic time for you to share, but I wonder if we should take a little break first? No. Okay. So if anybody needs to go to the bathroom, feel free to freely do that whenever, but we're going to start. So we have a mic up here, and we'd like you to come up here, and if you have a story about John, or if you just want to share gratitude or anything at all, you can come up here, and we'll set you up with a mic, and you'll be on.
There could be a line right here for all of you who want to come up to the front, and we have somebody.
Great.
And just say your name, please.
Great. Then you're going to go. Did you get that whole bit? You're going to hold the mic, stand up there like you're giving announcements. That's what you're doing.
My name is Randall, and it's wonderful to see everybody here. Just wanted to spend a couple minutes and share my gratitude for John and for Mountain Stream. This really feels, especially seeing Joseph, is really a full circle experience for me, and I'll explain that and how it gets us to John, and I'll make this brief, but I think you'll appreciate the stories. So in 1975, I was in Santa Cruz, going to start my third year of undergrad there. And a friend of mine handed me a book called Be Here Now. And I read it, and while I have to say I didn't understand any of it, there was something about it that was very familiar. And I couldn't put my finger on it because there was no reference point, but there was still something really familiar about it. A few years later, I had just graduated. It was 1978. I met Stephen Levine, who lived, coincidentally, 1 block away from me in Santa Cruz down by the harbor.
I remember.
And that was my first exposure to Vipassana. And he was holding weekly sits at his house, and I would go over there and was really interested and everything. And then we got a call and said, anyone that wants to come over, one of Stephen's students has passed away, and if you'd like to come and sit with the body of this individual. And it was a real stretch for me. It was so out of my comfort zone, but I did it anyway. Also out of my comfort zone is I had heard that Ram Dass was, who I had been reading and listening to in like cassette tapes, was staying at Stephen's house. So it was a Saturday morning in the summer of 1978, and I got the courage up to walk around, open up Stephen's front door, which was unlocked, walk upstairs to the bedroom, and I look inside the bedroom, and there is a cello in the corner, there's a chair, and there's Ram Dass in his bathrobe. And he looked at me, and he just went like this, like, come sit. I guess this happened all the time to Ram Dass. And I sat down, and neither of us said anything. We just looked at each other. We just looked at each other, and I realized he was taking me in, getting a sense. And he said a few simple things. And this story will all come together here in a moment or two. He said, I can see you've done a lot of work on your body, because I was like weighed about 130 pounds and was a yogi. He said, and you have a wonderful heart. He said, but your mind, your mind, you know, it's very busy. He said, I really want to encourage you to go to Massachusetts, and I want you to sit with my friends Joseph and Jack. Somehow I pulled together the money and a Volkswagen bus, and I by myself, and I drove across the country, and I enrolled in a 2-week residential retreat with them. Again, having never done anything like this, but I just jumped in. And during the course of that 2 weeks, they said, we have a special guest coming, and anyone that wants to stay, no charge, Mahasi Sayadaw is coming. And of course, this is all in retrospect. I had no idea who he was or how important he is to this whole lineage. So I stayed a 3rd week and sat. And that was a foundation in my life in 1978. Then I went on to explore other spiritual paths. Like you, this feels very dry. It's, you know, I was missing the nuance of it all. It felt very dry, and so I experienced, you know, other things. And fast forward, but I never lost touch with the practice. Fast forward to 2008, the world was melting down. My own financial life was melting down, and I went on the internet, and I typed in Vipassana Auburn. Mountain Stream. Susan remembers. She was very important to our Sangha, as Mary Helen and Maeve. I think Maeve is with us today. And so Diane and I, my wife of 36 years now, we started sitting with the Auburn group, and then we heard that somebody named John, who was the founder of Mountain Stream, was giving a day-long retreat. And where's Don? Raise your hand, Don. There you are. Don was hosting it over there on Wolf Road, had a big property he was managing. And I so distinctly remember the property, and I so distinctly remember meeting you the very first time. And everything settled. And one day I said, I've met my teacher. I'm going to cry now, I think. I said, I met my teacher. And I didn't think I was going to cry today, but oh well. And Mary Helen arranged for John and I to have many one-on-ones. You were offering that to students then.
Right.
And I took advantage of it, both there on Loxley Lane,
You remember,
in our
yeah.
office, but then up at your house, because
Right.
you were doing one-on-ones, and you just took me back to a full refresher of all the core elements of the teaching. So, you know, Diane and I have been fortunate to have sat probably over 150, residential retreat days with you, and countless, retreats over all these years, and since that time, and we've been really consistent in our practice, and with such gratitude. I was also just so inspired by John's life story, incredibly adventurous life, things that I would never do, and how much courage you have, and wildness you
Or
have.
stupidity.
And of course, knowing my background and being so into music, I loved all of John's stories, some of which are probably, inappropriate for this hall, but of the late 60s and the hate,
Yes.
and Pigpen and everything else, and the Dead and all of that. So, our relationship, Diane, and our relationship with John as our teacher just matured and matured. And in September, I think it was, of 2022, Marcia called me. I was driving up Highway 80 hiking. You remember the morning you called me? Said, hey, John is really in trouble.
I think it was Sharon.
One of you called me and said, John is really in trouble and he needs help. And she explained that he was having a real medical crisis. And I said, pack his stuff and I will be there this afternoon to pick him up. And that started a 7-month journey of John surviving for the second time cancer, and really dangerous. And I just want to share a few things, and it echoes Joseph's question. But John truly was fighting for his life. He was fighting for his life. He was very close to death on that day when we went to see Dr. Campbell, when he walked out of the room
Right.
to call a surgeon to say you need emergency surgery before we can even start the cancer treatment. But I want to share a couple things about observing John during this fight for his life. The first one, we are in the emergency room here at Sierra Nevada, right down here. And there were curtains between all of the stalls because it was just one big room with, and there was a lady next to us. And she was really having a difficult time. She was having a difficult time saying all kinds of crazy stuff and requesting this and that. And clearly she was, really struggling. And John, and he is in extreme pain, and he looks at me thinking about her, and he says, Duca Deluxe. that I will never forget that. Duca Deluxe. On a more serious note with that, because John's future was very uncertain. It was uncertain through every one of the 6 intense chemo sessions, because even people that make it through those 6 sessions don't survive.
Yeah.
So his life was really on that teetering point. And just a few things that Diane and I observed. John, you had no fear of dying. You never you had sadness about leaving your family, your kids, who Ty is here today, and Jen. And you talked about that, like the sadness of that, but not fear. You continued to practice. We would sit up in our sitting room with that big blue that big blue fleece that we keep there, because it's an honored piece, blanket that we got for John, you know that. And we would all sit together. We would all sit together. So John just continued his practice through that. And it was the equanimity. What you were teaching us, the teachings never stopped. You just continued to teach. Like Jake said, you know, we had a chance to catch up, and he said, John just is the teachings. Did I get that, say that right? John isn't teaching, he just is the teachings. He's living it. He is the expression of it. And that's what we experienced. And so I'm going to just leave with one last piece, and that is, well, actually two more pieces, because this is important. You know, it's so interesting this morning, and you probably don't even know this. This morning I went onto I went out to AI in two different places. And AI knows you. Claude knows you. But Claude's your personal friend. So there were two things that I was reminded of that are formally there in this. And he said John was one of the early teachers in Vipassana that recognized and integrated two elements. One, the value of psychotherapy for Dharma students and the application in that. And the other is the value of the appreciation of nature. The integration, which we hear throughout John's poetry, are references to nature in every bit. So I thought that was just really interesting this morning as I was right after my sit. Yeah. I'm just going to leave with one thing. I've noted several other core teachings, but the last thing I want to say is that you've taught us and taught all of us is to trust this practice. Trust this practice. And I think what binds us all together here at Mountain Stream and throughout the world for those of us that are practitioners is we have faith in this practice and in this lineage and in our teachers. So, John.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, Randall and Diane have been true friends, you know, and I feel so privileged to know you and have befriended. You know, it's really great. Yes.
Hey, John.
Hey.
This is Douglas. I recently returned from Asia and experienced a little bit of Buddhism in Thailand. And I came back here and got to be in the Mountain Stream Sangha and felt so much gratitude that John and Joseph and a few Tibetan teachers have brought the Dharma to the United States, to the West, and got to appreciate how the simplicity of how you had brought it here hasn't been trying to impose some cultural thing from Asia onto us here, but has just brought the simplicity of the practice for us to discover within ourselves. And it took me seeing how Buddhism became a cultural thing in Thailand and lost some of its purity, and how the simplicity of the practice that you brought here has helped me to go within and touch Buddha's teachings within myself. And I just really appreciate all the teachers from all times that's continued, and the perseverance of these teachings that are now being introduced into our lives here today. So thank you so much, John.
Thank you, Douglas.
Someone wrote a comment online I'd like to read. This is from Beverly Colgan. It says, I can offer you, John, the only poetry I can write. You started my journey at the Dharma Zephyr Insight Meditation Center retreats at Galilee and showed me over the years, by your own example, what love and peace look like. Gratitude and metta to you, dear teacher. There once was a teacher, J.T., who wrote poetry very expressively. His poems touched my heart, his teachings the start of the path that at last I can see.
It's so sweet.
Is there anybody online? This is Jen from the Meditation Hall. Anybody online who'd like to raise a virtual hand? We'll be happy to call you in. And anybody here? Well, I will go up. I'm going to say something. John Travis. On planet Earth right now, there's a lot of strife. And I think I'm not the only woman who would like to say, thank you for the way that you be a white, American, privileged male who leads with his heart and helps the rest of us find each other. The Sangha piece is so big. I understand that there were many years of history in Mountain Stream where there wasn't a home space. And I wasn't part of the gang then, but I'm really grateful that the home space came to be. And I know there are so many people that deserve so much thanks for that. Blessings on Sharon, blessings on all the folks that had hands on these special, special walls. Steve Selinsky, Susan Selinsky, I don't know everybody's names, Otis. Marcia came and warmed the joint up. Everybody who was an early member, Dan Scan, everybody else. Can you raise your hand if you were here before Mountain Stream had a home space? That would be really sweet. Right on. Blessings. Let's all look at those people and wave. Thank you so much. That's how Sangha be Sangha. Thank you so much. So awesome to see everybody. And I just feel like I worked at a place called Tree People in Los Angeles, and I'm an arborist, and I use the word magic to describe our settings. And Andy Lipkiss was the man who started Tree People, where I worked in LA as an arborist, and he used to speak about each tree as an acupuncture needle that we helped get planted around the city. And I feel like each person that you've helped to open our hearts is also like an acupuncture needle in the beloved body of this community, this planet, this complicated, paradoxical world. And I want to say thank you so much. And I love you.
You're so welcome. You know. Thank you, Jen.
We have someone online. Let's start with Patricia Kovici.
Patricia Kovici, yes.
Kovici.
Hey, thanks for calling on me. I so appreciate it. And I just want to say happy birthday to you, John, and meeting you over 40 years ago, sitting with you and Gil and Mary at Land of Medicine Buddha. How kind you were to me when I had an asthma attack there. And I've just been sitting so many times over the last few years. And I appreciate most of your openness and your love. And I just can't wait to see you again. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Patricia. Yeah, that goes back to Land of Medicine Buddha I taught some of my first retreats there.
Great.
I know there's a lot you don't know. And there's a lot you do.
So Maeve would like to share. Go for it.
Hi, John.
Hi, Maeve.
Just wonderful hearing hearing the stories and remembering this journey. Something about trusting the magic is what comes to mind when I think about the journey that brought me to the meditation class I did with you back in 1993. And just because I was at a dinner party and I was curious and interested in Buddhism, and I was a Quaker, and I mentioned it at dinner, and sure enough, the Scarmans told me that they were having a meditation class at their home starting the next week. And from there on, it was like this increasing encouragement to just not think too much about it. Just follow the path as it opens before you. And I think about being on a month-long meditation with you a few years after that, and I got homesick, and I was in the middle of the retreat, and I went down to my car and sat in my car for 15-20 minutes, and anyway, I told you about it in our interview, and you said, "Oh, that's a really good thing." That's a good thing. That shows that you're kind of you're moving through. You're getting to a place where more things are going to open up more, and just that encouragement, that attitude, was the indicative of kind of what I needed in every time along the way. And then your encouragement for me to study more deeply and go through and to become a teacher myself just has been, I'm so thankful, and so thankful for the conditions that brought us together and for your teaching. And it's wonderful that you turned 80. Yesterday I turned 86. And so that can be encouragement
the
to you.
The 16th on the 17th, so.
We keep going. So thank you.
Thank you, Maeve. You know.
I think I saw a Selinsky hand. Yes.
Did you see one of them?
Yeah. Oh, they're both there, but yeah, Steve's. Yeah, there he is.
Hey, John. Happy
Hey,
birthday.
Steve.
You finally reached 80. Okay. I have to say the one thing that has impressed me about your teaching has been your vulnerability, which to me is the direct pointing to compassion. Mm-hmm. Seeing yourself clearly and directly, and through your own self, seeing others. And I believe connecting with compassion that way. So thank you for your wonderful example. Transparent. You don't get in the way of the Dharma, you transmit it.
Thank you. And Susan shared a poem in the chat by Jane Hirschfield. One breath taken completely, one poem fully written, fully read. In such a moment, anything can happen.
Yes, that's Jane. Yeah.
Kathy Schwerin. Yeah.
Ooh.
There we go.
Mike?
Hey, John.
Hi.
Hello from Carson City.
Yes.
And gosh, I've known you more than 30 years. And we were first introduced by Katrina Reed way back in the day. And you started coming over in the early days of your teaching and used to come over to Carson several times a summer or a year. And as you got more popular, that dropped off. But there's so many stories about you that I could tell, but I think the one that that really came to mind was when we started leading residential retreats up at Camp Galilee at Lake Tahoe. And this is, well, you would probably know the year. It was 16, 17 years ago, 15, something like that. And you were really sick with the cancer. And you had just come through a really tough time. And you were going to be our first teacher on our very first retreat that Renate organized. And you knew that if you didn't come, it might just stop the thing from the very beginning. And so God bless you. You got yourself to Galilee, and you would come out and teach in the morning and the evening, and then you'd get back to your cabin, and Christy and I would sit in front of the room holding your place. And it was the only retreat I've ever been on where you didn't come to every single sitting period. Even with all the interviews and the groups, you'd always find your way back to the hall. So we knew what a tough time you were having, and we're so grateful to you for all those years of teaching at Galilee. You're coming again this summer.
I am.
Yep, and I'm so delighted, and I'm glad you're still here.
Well, thank you. I am glad you're still here too.
Yes.
You have done such a great job with Dharma's effort. You know, it's
Actually, we're having movie night tonight. One of our Sangha members interviewed
right.
Christy and me, and they made a movie. It's on our website too, but we had the world premiere in Carson last winter, but now we're going to be showing it up in Reno tonight. So
great.
Yeah. And it's all, I don't think we would have been able to do what we did without you coming and being such a great support all those early years, especially. So I love you. And
I love you too.
Yeah. Yep.
We're doing good.
Yep, we are.
And it's not us, it's the Dharma.
It is. You're right. And us. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Alexa, would you like to share?
Please.
Oh, Alexa, wow.
Dear John, a deep bow of gratitude to you. I think I've known you since the 90s, and no one's really talked about the time of your being an itinerant teacher, because I've sat with you in Davis, in Nevada City, in a little cabin in Kromberg with the little fire, with the little, whatever that was, fireplace to keep us warm in the middle of winter, and particularly many times at Bodega Bay. And I know you've traveled far and wide beyond those places to bring the Dharma to people who can't get to mountain streams, sorry.
Yeah.
So I really want to let all of you know who have John right in your backyard how lucky you are to have him be your loving teacher all this time. And I just wanted to say a little bit about your humility, and as someone said before me, your vulnerability and that absolute steadfast practice of keeping our hearts open. And you really were a great support to me in my Plum Village journey that I've been making. And it was really wonderful to be in a practice where we didn't have to talk like in Plum Village, which is quite social. And I know. And, just to have those times, those individual interviews back in the day, and you really believed in me and my practice and my path. So I really thank you so much. And I'm so happy to celebrate your 80th. And I hope the cake is good because we won't be eating any here online. And you have many more years of blessings and good times and good teaching. Alexa bowing out.
Oh, matakwasi. Yeah, thank you.
Here's some cake for you.
Oh, thank you, Adam.
Hi, John. This is kind of new for me to talk in front of everybody, but I really felt called to come up and tell you how much I appreciate you. And you talking about the old days at Spirit Rock kind of brought some stuff up into me. In the late 80s, early 90s, I found my mind just overworking and just not really having the greatest control over my being. And at that time, I was a real estate broker. So I was making money, and I was really good at my work, and I was raising my kids, and this and that. But wait, when it comes to relationships, for real, I was having trouble. So I went to Spirit Rock. First, I got the book Be Here Now, Enlightenment on the Run, Jim Paulsky's books. I was reading everything and sitting at the bookstore in Berkeley, Emeryville. I love that bookstore, the real big one over there. And then I went to I think it was a day long for NVC with Cornfield, and I'm not real good on names because I have had some car accident.
They know.
And and so I then started that practice with Donald Rothberg. I think that's his name in Berkeley because that was close to me. And there's a few more people. And then I had in 1997, I was still selling real estate and really good in my game and I had this big heart, and I had I would get hurt so easy, and I would couldn't understand how people could be a certain way. But I put all my clients, I put myself in their positions. So I was really good at my real estate and had referrals and things. But there was something more for me out there. I just knew there was, and I was driving up to go look at some properties and had a rollover car accident, a really bad one, a very traumatic experience. And this old ancient shaman came to me and gave me a direction of shamanism to find peace, emotional peace. But I have to say, I always went back to my meditation practice, and I spent some time up in Santa Cruz at the
Atlanta Medicine Buddha. Yeah.
With the Bob, with the he had the kids.
Okay.
What was his name? Something Baba.
I can see him, but I can't.
I know. Well, it had such an impression on me, and I was so like the compassion and like whoa.
Baba Haridas.
Yes, Haridas, and so yeah, and but I just continued my shamanic practice and yoga and meditation, and then I sold my property, and I also went to Shasta, some meditations up there. A week long, I think I went there, and one was nonverbal. And then I moved here to Grass Valley, and I sold everything and bought a house. And I had invested in some, and thought, I had it made. I have some money, and I'm going to buy this house, and I'm going to use this money for this. I had it all planned out exactly how it was going to all work out. And then I get this letter in the mail that I lost all my investments. It was this improper scheme thing that I had been getting money on for 10 years that I had no idea. I had an attorney look over my paperwork. I thought it was... And so I was like, wow, my nervous system is so much combobulated, and I came here. I was like, what am I going to do? I have this big house payment, oh my God. And I came here and I sat, and we sat in meditation, and then you gave a Dharma talk, and your Dharma talk was on impermanence, non-attachment. And I was just like, whoa. Thank God, it just calmed my nervous system, and the way you presented it with your authenticity and your vulnerability of being who you are just really impressed me. And so I kept coming, and I'm just so appreciative. I moved away. I've been, kind of in a silence place for the last 5 years, and I'm sitting with that after being here. And I stayed 10 years after that, practicing here with my shamanism and sitting in meditation. I I'm just so appreciative of you. I had to come to your birthday and let you know how much I appreciate you. And when I would come, it was just so wonderful and enlightening and calming. It felt like a home. This is a home that I'm welcome at. Even though I practice shamanism, I'm welcome here. And Marcia has been so wonderful. I don't know where she is, right here.
She's right there.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. And thank you all, and your Sangha, and everybody's been so beautiful, and I'm so appreciative. And I'm on my way back over here, so you might see more of me in the coming years.
Well, great.
Namaste and happy
Namaste.
birthday.
Thank you. Something's happening, so. Oh, sorry. Did you want this? Oh. I thought they were good. I thought they were coming right. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear John. Happy birthday to you. Many, many more.
I wish all beings to awaken and not be afraid and help each other. Aho.
So there's going to be cake and a few other little treats in the kitchen, in the tea room. So you're welcome to mosey on in there. If you want to break with just a little bit of metta, John.
Yes, no, with a big metta. But not long, no. So just taking a moment to realize, and I'm touched by what's going on here. But ultimately, it is your heart that touches all other hearts. But you have to start with your own heart. And first just direct that fickle, trafficked mind of yours directly to your body heart. May I be at peace. May I be healthy. May I be free from any inner or outer harm. May I awaken for the benefit of myself and all beings everywhere. May love be the root of all thought, of all impulse, so that we can be helpful to each other, for our own benefit and for the benefit of all those around us, and ultimately to beings everywhere, that they may experience the wonder of an open heart. May all beings everywhere be happy. Stay out of trouble.
thank you, everyone. We're going to socialize now, and thank you for everyone that made this happen. And if you're online, thank you for being here. And if you'd like to unmute and say something, feel free to do that. And we can have a cacophony of sound. And most of all, thank you, John.
Happy birthday, John. I love you. This is Charmaine from Long Beach, California. Who knew you back in LA in the 80s? You remembered my name.
Happy birthday, John. It's Sharon. Much love to you.
Happy birthday,
Always.
John. It's Kristen from Idaho.
Happy birthday, John. It's Tony from Idaho.
And Paula, happy birthday. Thank you.
Happy birthday, John. This is Charlotte from Hawaii.
Happy birthday, John, from Roseanne.
Happy birthday, John, from Stuart Watts from New Mexico.
Here's Don.
Yeah.
It's Rosie. Must be hot in there.